I first met, you know, with the folks from Valley Boat, I think it was Jeff, I think it was Richard Close, it was Ricky, it was, you know, it was a group of people. They came to the legislature and said, look, we've been trying for the longest time to study this issue of cityhood. We know you don't agree with it. You know, I was Speaker of the Assembly at the time, but they said, we know you don't agree with it, but the city won't fund this study, and we need your help. And look, admittedly, as many people have written, I knew I was going to be running from something, you know, and you know that I was looking at running for mayor, and people could discount and be cynical about why I did it. But I'll tell you something. I've always believed in the battle of ideas, and I've always believed that it's important to flesh out debates and have, you know, vigorous discussion about the burning issues. And I knew, because I was born and raised in LA, that the Valley's always felt, you know, like the weak sister or the stepchild in the family, and that there were a lot of people who really felt that we should look at this issue of cityhood. And so I provided that first $1 million, which really got it going, I think, by all, you know, and I think that's why over the years I've had a good relationship with Valley Vote, not because they, you know, they knew I was against it, but they also knew that I respected and understood why people were for it. And if you remember in my first race, I always responded to the issue of secession very differently from others. What I said back then was, look, you know, rather than berating and criticizing people for wanting to secede, why don't you listen to them and try to fix the problems that they're raising and the issues and concerns that they have. And I'm very proud. I mean, I see a lot of you at a lot of the events I know, because you do the blogs, you look at my schedule over the last 2.5 years. I've been in the San Fernando Valley more than anybody before me in a very, I'm not going to say ever because I don't know what ever is, but certainly more than anybody in a very, very long time. I think, you know, Wendy used to say that in the first 3 months I had visited her district more than, you know, others had done in a whole 4-year period. And without getting into who others are, because that's not important. But what is important, I understood that a lot of this job is about rolling up your sleeves and doing it and being present. And, you know, I hear from people all the time, you know, I see you on TV, but I like seeing you in my neighborhood from time to time. And even if it's only to get a, you know, be upset with you because they're very, you know, happy with it, you know. But you know, they got an issue, they got a gripe. I was just so that's one. And I've tried to be here. I've tried to be present. I've tried to be responsive. 2, you know, I listened early on. If you mind if I take this over? I listened early on to a number of issues that you all raised. And one of them I heard time and again was the issue of public safety. And if you remember, both in my first race and in my second, that really wasn't the biggest issue that I was focused on. And yet as mayor, I think, you know, resoundingly, without question, without debate, it's been the #1 issue I've focused on. And why? Because I listened. And I heard from enough people, hey, I like that you want to get involved in education. I think it's important. These schools, in fact, that's always been an issue for the folks from Valley Vote. You know, I like that you want to do more street repair and libraries and all the important things that we do. But I think the most important thing you could do, if you want to take my advice, I hear from people, is you have to do something about public safety. And I'll tell you something. From early on, when I became mayor, I recognized that the progress we had made, frankly, since Bratton has been here, but under my predecessor those first 2 years, and that we've continued to build upon, is the predicate and the foundation for having a vibrant city, for keeping the middle class, and for being and for ensuring ensuring that we're going to have a kind of investment in our city that can be a foundation for addressing the issue of schools and a lot of other things. And so I'm very proud of the fact that in the almost 3 years that I've been mayor, you've seen crime continually go down. Gang crime last year we saw went up, and particularly up. I mean, I saw it on the masthead of Ron Kaye's Daily News. It said 160% increase in gang crime, and you've got to understand what that meant. The numbers have been so small before that they went up. It wasn't that you had now an epidemic necessarily, but they've been so small, they went up dramatically, and I immediately jumped on that issue. You know, gang crime is down 40% here in the San Fernando Valley. You look at homicides, look at violence in the city, every single year down virtually in every part of the city, and we're going to continue to focus on that. I promised 1,000 officers. I'm the first mayor to make strides toward that effort. And by 2010, when I promised, I expect we're going to be at 1,000 new officers here in the city of Los Angeles. And it's not been easy, because as you can see, what historically has happened, you know, whenever there's a tough budget time, people say, oh, just kidding. You know, I can't do that after all. And I'm saying no, it's got to be our priority. And we've made it our priority. And I just left, Ricky and I were at the West Valley Family Guidance Center. I promised I'd go over there, and of course, nobody goes unpunished. I knew as soon as I got there something was up, because it said, an evening with Mayor Villaraigosa. And as soon as the people started making their presentations, if you've seen, well, as soon as they began to make their presentations, it was clear to me they were concerned about some cuts that I'm making with a anti-gang program that will impact the West Valley. And of course, I realized why they were having an evening with them. Yeah, and I think what they appreciated is I was straight with them. The Advancement Project did a 6-month study looking at all of our anti-gang programs. The city controller, you love Laura Chick, most of you. She did another study, and they said the way the city spends money on gangs, it's like spreading peanut butter all across the city. It's not having an effect. And so they said, you got to come up with targeted areas to focus limited resources. You got to spend more resources. We went from 18 to 23 million. From we went to 12 gang reduction zones, and unfortunately, that part of the West Valley is going to be eliminated. So I was straight with them about that it's been eliminated, and then I said, hey, you were smart enough to get me over here, so we're going to figure out what we do to help you out, but it won't be from that pot of money, and we went through all of that. So, you know, the second thing I'd say is about listening. Well, you know, when I remember the debate around Valley Vote, and I was out of office at the time, and, you know, it didn't get written a whole lot about, but, you know, I stood right there with Jim Hahn at every turn on secession, because I really did believe that once we had the discussion, I wanted to weigh in, and I wanted to keep the city together. And I knew I wasn't going to keep the city together even though I wasn't going to be mayor. To be honest, at that time, I didn't even know I was going to be on the city council. I was just out of office, and I felt strongly like the city needed to stay together. I stood with him at every turn whenever invited. He didn't invite very often, but, you know, I was there when invited. And, you know, I did. But one of the things I heard from y'all, and I heard it again and again, is the second issue that you had, is the issue of schools. You know, I saw Roberta Weintraub yesterday at Mother's Day brunch. I was with my family, my kids, and my sisters, and we were all celebrating. And I was thinking about that, you know, back then, and busing, and all of those issues. What was the name of the Bobby Fiedler, all of you remember all of that. And I was thinking, what was that really about? A lot of people said it was racial. You know, maybe for some it was about that. It was also about a couple other things.